T9C got the fucking juice.
Silver's the new gold.
Hey, Chris, this shit's fun.
T9C got the fucking juice.
Silver's the new gold.
Hey, Chris, this shit's fun.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of JT Sports Live. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in on this Friday afternoon episode, man. We got a really good one on deck. The Atlanta Falcons, when they drafted Michael Penix 8th overall, they really screwed over the Las Vegas Raiders because they still don't have a quarterback. Their quarterbacks, Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, have been struggling in training camp. They've been throwing a couple of hospital balls to Devontae Adams. And I want to explain why it's going to be really difficult for the Raiders to overcome their terrible quarterback situation and talk about just how badly they got screwed over by the Falcons taking Penix at 8. I'm also going to be explaining to you guys why I'm picking the Green Bay Packers to win it all this year. I got concerns with the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiving core. On the college football side of things, I think there's a really strong possibility that we could see Deion Sanders coaching the Arkansas Razorbacks next year. I'm going to explain why. Cam Ward recently was named ACC Conference Player of the Year. I didn't even know you could win a Player of the Year award in the preseason without even playing a single game, but I believe he's going to be able to bring back Miami football. And Billy Napier, a lot of you Florida fans were not happy with my way too early candidates to replace Billy. A lot of you guys believe that he's going to be able to win 6-7 games and save his job, but I don't share your optimism. So we got a really good episode on deck. I don't know how many of you guys watched the NFL Hall of Fame game last night, but I did. And I kind of forgot about the NFL changing the kickoff rules, and they made special teams more important now than what it ever has been. So if you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, man. We got a really good episode on deck. We are in preseason mode right now, and we're starting to get a little bit closer to reaching mid-season form. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Shout out to my guy, Kate Roan, with the $4.99 donation. He says JT Sports Live in the preseason. Football is back. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. If you're listening on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we go live. Remember, we are not just a YouTube channel, we are a podcast. You can find this episode and all of our previous ones on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. If you have a question that you would like answered on our mailbag episodes that we're going to be doing on the weekend, you can send them in the DMs on Instagram at JT_, and on X at JT__. Also, make sure to go ahead, leave us a follow on those platforms as well, so you can stay up to date with everything that we have going on with the pod. And before we dive into tonight's show, here's a quick word from our sponsor. In football, we all know that no quarterback can win without good protection up front. It's also important that you protect yourself from data brokers who sell your personal information online to scammers, spammers, and anybody else who may want to target you. That's why you should use Aura, today's sponsor of this episode. Aura shows which data brokers are passing away your information on the internet and automatically submits opt-out requests on your behalf. Go to aura.com/JT Sports in description or pin comment down below to get a 14-day free trial and protect your personal information from being exposed online. Cleaning up your information online not only helps reduce the amount of spam you receive, but it also protects you from hackers who could use this info to help gain access into your social media accounts, bank accounts, or other sensitive information. Go to our sponsor, aura.com/JT Sports in description or pin comment down below to gain access to your 14-day free trial and protect yourself from hackers looking to gain access into your sensitive information online. All right, man, let's get into it. So, last night I was watching the NFL Hall of Fame game, and I don't know how many of you guys remember that the NFL changed the new kickoff format, but I'm a really big fan of it because now it seems like the kickoffs now have added more importance to special teams that wasn't there in previous years. Because remember, special teams is one of those areas that a lot of us don't think of when it comes to determining the outcomes of football games, but with how these new kickoff rules are set up, it's pretty much like these new kickoffs are going to be like running plays. It's just that you don't have a quarterback handing the football off to the running back in the backfield, and these guys have to bring it out. And it's like really fun to watch because it's a bunch of chaos ensuing. You see a lot of big hits, but you also have the capability to see a lot of big returns that we haven't really seen the last couple of years because so many teams are deciding just to go ahead, kneel it in the end zone, take the touchback instead of bringing the ball out. So these new kickoff rules have been in place to help promote player safety because the kickoffs in the past have had a high number of injuries, so they want to reduce it. And plus, you're going to have way more teams that are going to decide to bring the football out, which you pretty much don't have any choice but to do so. And with this new kickoff rule, it's going to add a different element to the game that we've been severely lacking, because they say that the three most important keys to winning in the NFL is offense and defense and special teams. But how many games have really been determined by special teams outside of when it comes down to a field goal kicker? Now, with the new kickoff rules, it's somewhat of a strategy involved to who you're going to put back there to return the kicks. Like, for example, if the Chicago Bears had prime Devin Hester, he probably would return at least 2 of these kickoffs once a game. And when you have a guy like Cordell Patterson playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers, he has the capability to have a really big part in the Steelers being able to have a successful season with how good of a kick returner he is. And my high school coach used to always emphasize the importance of special teams because there are a lot of hidden yardage that you can get if you're really good in the special teams area of football. And with the new kickoff format, if you can find a way to get a really good returner back there and he can take a few back for you, that could result in you winning an extra 2-3 games. And maybe you have a guy who's really good and he ends up resulting in your team, winning a few close games due to how good of a returner he is. So having this new side of special teams being implemented into the NFL, I believe it's a really good thing. And I haven't really heard too many people have a lot of negative things to say about the new kickoff format, although some people have argued against it being more safer for the players due to how they're lined up. But it's the difference when you have players lined up closer to each other versus having the team kick the ball off downfield and you got a bunch of dudes running full speed 30, 40 yards downfield and they're getting blindsided, they're getting cracked back blocked. The new format for how they have the kickoffs now, I believe is going to add I think that it's going to make the NFL more entertaining now when it comes to watching these kickoffs, because for the most part, anytime a team kicks the ball off prior in the past, you weren't really paying too much attention. You would just go to the kitchen, you probably get you a drink of water, you come back, and then the offense and defense take the field. But now you're going to have to watch what happens on these kick returns. And if you end up having a really good returner, it's going to be really important if you are the team that's on the opposite end of things, that your kick return defense is good enough to hinder these dudes from breaking loose and having these big touchdown runs, because these kickoffs, I'm trying to tell you guys, are going to be really big to us seeing a lot of upsets this NFL season, because there are going to be a few teams that they may not have a good offense, but they got a great defense and they're really good on special teams, and they end up winning a lot of games due to how big of a factor this new kickoff rule is going to be into winning these games. Because now, if you have a good returner back there, it's going to make things a lot easier for you to win games if you can find somebody who can take at least 1 or 2 of these things back consistently. So those are my thoughts on the new kickoff rules. I'm eager to see how you guys are going to respond to them in the comment section down below. I got some bad news concerning the Las Vegas Raiders. Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, according to reports, they have been struggling heavily. We need a new endpoint for that. I got bad news for Raiders fans. Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew have been struggling in training camp up to this point. They've been really inconsistent. They've been throwing hospital balls to Devontae Adams. And this is not good when it comes to the Raider fans out there who've been coming at me one-sided all this offseason saying how they're going to win 9-10 games and they don't need to have great quarterback play to do so. With how bad Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew look up to this point in camp, man, I don't even think the Raiders are going to be able to win more than 4 or 5 games this year, because you got to play Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes twice. You got to face off against Lamar, Joe Burrow, Matthew Stafford, Tua. It's going to be hard for you to win games like this if you don't have at least halfway competent quarterback play. And there's been a lot of Raiders fans, believe it or not, who've been gassing up Aiden O'Connell, thinking that he could be the second coming of Tom Brady. And it's just been a really slow start for the Raiders quarterback position to start off camp. Antonio Pierce, he hasn't said who's currently winning the job at this moment. Right now, it seems like he's just trying to prolong naming a starter so he can get the best out of both of these dudes. But the Raiders really don't have a chance to have too much success this year if they can't get at least average quarterback play out of one of these dudes. And a lot of Raiders fans are really high on Aiden O'Connell based off how well he played to end last year. You know, he had outstanding performance Thursday night against the Chargers. He was pretty good against the Colts and the Denver Broncos. And Gardner Minshew, he damn near led the Indianapolis Colts to the postseason in replace of Anthony Richardson. So you definitely understand where some of the Raiders fans are coming from and their optimism about their quarterback room. But let's just be honest. There's no way you're going to be able to be a playoff team if you don't get great quarterback play out of these dudes. Your schedule is way harder than what it was last year. And most of the Raiders' wins under Antonio Pierce last year came against backup quarterbacks. The only win they had against a team that was above 500 was the Kansas City Chiefs, and Aiden O'Connell played awful in that game. They didn't complete a single pass in that ball game after the first quarter. So if you are really serious about the Raiders having a winning season this year, you may need to reconsider that thinking, because, I mean, with what we've been hearing about them coming out of training camp right now, it looks like their quarterback play is still going to be a big hindrance to them having a successful season. And I'm not a Raiders hater. I call myself a Raiders truther. And the truth is, you can't win in today's NFL by just relying on your defense and having a great run game like how Raiders fans think they're going to be able to do this year, man. Listen, the Raiders defense needs to be playing like the 85 Bears or the 2000 Baltimore Ravens defense if they want to get to the postseason this year. This definitely could be a top 5 unit, but absolutely no chance are they going to be able to overcome Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew giving them below average QB play. Even if you do have an all-around talented team, which the Raiders do have, the quarterback position is the most important position to winning and losing in today's NFL. If they would have had a better quarterback, or let's say they would have drafted Michael Penix or Jaden Daniels in this past year's draft, I would have them as a surefire playoff team. But you're not going to win a lot of games in 2024 throwing out Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. And some Raiders fans are going to say, well, JT, maybe they're struggling just because we got a great defense. Listen, they have had nothing but terrible days offensively. Their best day of practice came Tuesday, but even that wasn't really all that great. Even if you do have a truly outstanding defense, your quarterback should at least be able to put together 2-3 good practices, and Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell have yet to be able to do that. And it's really surprising for me, who's not a Raiders fan, to see a good amount of this fan base so high on how good they think this ball club can be when their quarterback position is as bad as what it's ever been in the last 8 years. When you had Derek Carr, you never had concerns about how good your QB play was going to be. You knew that at worst, Derek Carr was going to be average. But at his best, he was a top 13, top 12 quarterback. And now they're really starting to regret their decision to get rid of him. Because now, in the way toughest division, where you have Sean Payton, who now has his quarterback, you got Justin Herbert, who now is going to have Jim Harbaugh, you're not going to have 2-4 easy wins like how you had last year when you had the opportunity to go against a Justin Herbert-less Chargers team that had quit on their head coach at the time. Sean Payton, the Broncos are going to be way better under him in year 2 with Bo Nix at the helm because he's a better fit for what he wants out of his quarterback. Bo Nix is going to run the style of offense that Sean Payton wasn't able to because Russell Wilson had a limited skill set. So with the Raiders' quarterback struggles going on in training camp right now, I don't see too much improving from this point on until the season starts, because we knew, most of us that were realistic understood that the Raiders at best, we're probably going to be a 7-win team this year. I don't know why the hell some Raiders fans actually think they have a chance of having a winning record this year when you got two of the worst starting quarterbacks in the game competing for your starting quarterback job, but they're not going to go too far this year. You got a really nice team. Your offensive line is going to be improved. We know the defense is going to be nice, but quarterback just ruins everything for the Raiders this year. And, if you're a fan of the Las Vegas Raiders, you should be really upset with the Atlanta Falcons. You should hate Atlanta for what they did drafting Michael Penix 8th overall, because before the 2024 draft took place, there was no way I thought Michael Penix was not going to be a Las Vegas Raider. They had brought him out on a top 30 interview. They had a lot of interest in Michael Penix, and I thought that Penix was the perfect fit for the Las Vegas Raiders in terms of how he would have meshed with their culture. He has a lot of swag. He's a high character guy. He would have got along perfectly with Devontae Adams and Antonio Pierce. But the Falcons deciding to do one of the dumbest decisions in NFL draft history, taking a quarterback when you already paid for Kirk Cousins in free agency, and he's already up there in age, and you plan on sitting him for 2-3 years. By the time Michael Penix starts for Atlanta, he's going to be closer to 30 years old. This is somebody who is good enough to start and produce at a high level from day one if he was given the starting job. Now for the Las Vegas Raiders, you miss out on Michael Penix, and then J.J. McCarthy went next, and then Bo Nix followed after. You ended up being unable to fill the biggest need that you had going into this offseason, which was finding a franchise quarterback. And now you enter this season, handicapped with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. The Atlanta Falcons really effed over the Las Vegas Raiders in the worst way possible. You can make the excuse of, man, we didn't want Michael Penix because he had the injury concerns. It didn't matter if Michael Penix had a few season-ending injuries at Indiana earlier on in his career, because his last 2 years at Washington, he played in every single game. He didn't get injured in time. So if you have somebody that's been healthy the last couple of years, I don't really have too many concerns about your durability going into the NFL when you've proven that you can stay healthy. The Raiders needed somebody who not only could produce at least above average level at QB, but they needed somebody who this locker room could rally behind, a quarterback who could galvanize the team. Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew aren't going to galvanize the Las Vegas Raiders this year. If you watched Netflix Wide Receiver with Devontae Adams, this dude was insanely frustrated with how bad the QB play was. And there was a reason why on his recent appearance on Club Shay Shay, he made the joke about wanting Tom Brady to come out of retirement and play for the Raiders. There was an old head that told me a few years ago that there's truth behind every joke. He knows that the Raiders quarterback position is not good, and despite what he may say publicly, his body language and the Netflix documentary series said otherwise. And it didn't look like he had too much confidence in Aiden O'Connell. And with them throwing him hospital balls in training camp, that it's only going to be about a matter of time before frustrations start to boil over and Devontae Adams really lets his anger be known publicly to everybody that, hey, he's not happy with how the QB situation is playing out down there in Las Vegas. The Falcons gave the Raiders one of the worst possible lessons that you could learn during the draft, and that is if you need to draft a quarterback, no matter if you have to give up a little bit too much to go get him, if you believe this dude can be your guy, you have to go get him. You thought that taking Michael Penix at 13 was a reach. Well, the Atlanta Falcons said, hold my beer. And even if it was a reach, if you would have traded up to 7 or 6 to get Michael Penix, you still would have had somebody who can give you better quarterback play this year than what you're going to receive this season. Not only do you have two of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL that could be starting for you, but you also have one of the worst offensive coordinators calling plays on that side of football for you. Atlanta did the Raiders a huge disservice when they drafted Michael Penix overall. I was hurt for Raiders fans out there. And I'm not even somebody who really cares too much about Las Vegas, but I really wanted to see them get their guy, because if you have Michael Penix going into this season, I would view you as a lock to make it to the playoffs, because Michael Penix is way too good to be riding the bench for 2-3 years behind Kirk Cousins. If he was on the Raiders or the Minnesota Vikings, he would have been a day one starter. I had a really high first round grade on Michael Penix. He throws the football insanely accurate outside of the numbers. He's a fantastic deep ball thrower, has a rifle for the arm. The dude ran 4.5 at his pro day. So he has tons of athleticism. He's a great locker room guy. You love his character. You love how he was able to overcome several season-ending injuries, turn around his career at Washington, be a Heisman finalist. This dude would have been a perfect fit for the Raiders organization, because right now it's really hard to sell me that the Raiders are going to overachieve this year, having the worst quarterback play in the league. Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew aren't going to shock anybody. They're not going to be that good. Raiders fans are just trying to buy into some false hope just to have a reason to be optimistic about this season. But once you get to week 8, week 9, the Raiders are pretty much going to be looking forward to the 2025 NFL draft, when they have an opportunity to finally get their franchise guy, because they probably are going to end up having a top 3 pick. Having the Atlanta Falcons take Michael Penix at 8 really destroyed what could have been a really good season this year for Las Vegas, man. And I still don't understand the decision by Atlanta to take Penix that high. They had other areas of need that they needed to concern. Their defense still has a lot of holes, including on the defensive line when it comes to who's going to be able to get after the quarterback. You would have been better suited just trading down, drafting Dallas Turner, and then taking a quarterback later on. But for the Raiders to have Atlanta take Michael Penix at 8, I mean, it really had to be devastating for Antonio Pierce and their new general manager, Tom Telesco, because, I mean, you needed a quarterback really badly this offseason, and you still have yet to address that position. Gardner Minshew is nothing but a average starter at best. Normally, he ends up giving you decent QB play, but he throws his wide receivers into danger. You saw how he got Michael Penix's head taken off his damn shoulders against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he was the reason why Indianapolis didn't make it to the playoffs. The only reason he was good was because of the coaching of Shane Steichen. So the Raiders are in a really bad situation thanks to the Atlanta Falcons screwing them over and taking Michael Penix at 8. Because if they would have passed on Michael Penix, there was no chance he was going to end up a Las Vegas Raider, man. Having Michael Penix on Las Vegas would have changed everything for the Raiders going into this year. And without him, you still don't have a good answer at quarterback. And that's why I don't believe the Raiders are going to have that much success this year. And I think they're going to end up being one of the worst teams in the NFL, despite how much I love Antonio Pierce and how good that defense is going to be. You only can go as far as what your quarterback takes you. It's a quarterback-driven league. You're not going to be able to win just relying on having a good run game and defense. It's not the 90s or the early 2000s anymore. It's a passing league. You got to throw the football to win close games, and the Las Vegas Raiders don't have a QB who's good enough to win these one-possession games, because if they did, you would have already had a guy, Aiden O'Connell, who already would have proved himself. He had ample opportunity to prove himself last year. He didn't do anything noteworthy against the Miami Dolphins. He struggled against the Minnesota Vikings. Hell, he was about to get benched in that game. And then he ends up going off Thursday night against Brandon Staley and his final outing with the Chargers. And then he kind of changes his perception a little bit. But there's not a lot of potential there with Aiden O'Connell. And there's not really too much juice with Gardner Minshew neither. There's a reason why he's a journeyman backup at this point in his career. The Raiders got really screwed by Atlanta. If you're a Raiders fan, you should be really pissed off with the Atlanta Falcons, and you should be rooting for them to fail at every turn, man, because Atlanta did the Raiders really dirty by not allowing them to get a chance to address their quarterback position, taking Michael Penix at 8. So my Super Bowl prediction for this year, the team I think that's going to win it all are the Green Bay Packers, man. Jordan Love, I see him as the next great Green Bay Packers quarterback. They went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, and now they go from Rodgers to Jordan Love. His sample size was really small last year, but you love what you saw the second half of the 2023 NFL season out of Jordan Love. This dude had a 20-3 touchdown interception ratio. He balled out against the Kansas City Chiefs. He balled out Thanksgiving Day against the Detroit Lions. And then he goes into the postseason absolutely scorching. He sent the Dallas Cowboys packing, pretty much sent all of Cowboys Nation into hibernation with how quiet they've been ever since that loss to the Packers. And then he had a really good game against the 49ers up until the closing minutes of it when he pretty much imploded. Jordan Love is the truth. Right now, to me, he's a top 6, top 7 quarterback in the game, and he definitely is on my top 3 list of candidates to end up winning MVP. And with what the Packers have around Jordan Love, an elite offensive line that has a good amount of depth, you got a really deep wide receiver room. They don't have any wideout currently that is elite, but they have a lot of solid guys who not only are really productive, but they got guys on the bench who could probably be a high-end wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2 on the majority of NFL teams out there. But what has me so sold on Green Bay winning it all this year is how improved this defense is going to be. For the last 3 years, the Packers have had one of the league's most disappointing defenses because of how bad Joe Barry has been as a defensive coordinator. Like, if you think about the most talented defenses right now, the Green Bay Packers definitely are up there. They got great cornerbacks, Eric Stokes, Jair Alexander. You got a really underrated defensive line, man. I mean, Rashawn Gary is one of the better pass rushers in the league, and he doesn't get enough credit. Sometimes injuries kind of hold him back, but when he's fully healthy, I think he's good enough to win Defensive Player of the Year. You got Preston, you got Smith. Well, you don't got the Smith brothers anymore, but you got a lot of talent on the defensive line. You got a really good group of linebackers. The thing that has held back Green Bay's defense from being an elite unit has been how bad their defensive coordinator was. With you hiring Jeff Hafley, who was the head coach of Boston College, this is going to be a vastly improved defensive unit. And if your defense would have at least just been average last year, you could have been finding yourself playing in Super Bowl 58 last season. We know that this offense is not going to skip a beat this year. I'm not concerned about 2023 being false gold for Jordan Love. It's not about how you start. It's about how you finish. And when you have a quarterback that's fairly inexperienced like what Jordan Love was last year, of course, it's fair to expect him to have a roller coaster of a ride his first season starting. His first 2 games were really good, and then he had a 2-month stretch where he just looked terrible. And then around Thanksgiving, that's when things started to click. And Thanksgiving is when the good teams start to separate themselves from the average teams. That's when you start to find out who the true contenders are versus who are the false contenders out there who are pretenders, because Thanksgiving is when the real NFL season starts, and that's when you want your franchise quarterback to be playing his best football, and that's what Jordan Love did. So that's why I'm not too concerned about Jordan Love's new extension. Did the Packers pay him too much too early when he has such a small sample size? When you go 20-3, your last couple of games, like what you did last year, you send the Cowboys packing. You did the NFL and all of us who watch this thing a favor by shutting up the Dallas Cowboys, man. We know how much we hate hearing this fan base talk. They are the most delusional fan base in the league. And Jordan Love shut these boys up. They haven't said a peep ever since that disappointing loss they suffered to Green Bay. And with how well he played against the 49ers, I mean, how can you not be confident if you're a Packers fan and what you're going to have out of Jordan Love going into this year, man? He could go off. He could have 40, maybe 50 touchdowns this year. He was on an absolute tear to end last season. So I'm really high on Jordan Love. He's a large reason why I'm sold on the Packers being able to win the Super Bowl this year. I got them beating the Houston Texans in the biggest game of the year, man. That's how much I believe in Jordan Love and what the Packers are going to have on defense. They got one of the more talented teams in the NFC. Okay, they got a really young group of wide receivers that are really promising, and you couple that with a really good offensive line, it's really hard to see Jordan Love having a slump this year. Plus, with an improved defense, that's also going to help bail him out when he does have those games when he ends up being a little bit more turnover prone than what you would like. The Cowboys, man, I was so happy they got sent home by Green Bay. Once Jordan Love had the performance that he did against Green Bay with that Dan Quinn coach defense, that's all I needed to see to sell me on him being the next great thing in Lambeau, because he definitely is going to end up playing at a high level this year. And when he does, expect for the Packers to win it all this year. He's going to be the one dude who could stop the Kansas City Chiefs from being able to three-peat this year, although I don't think they're going to end up facing the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I have them beating the Houston Texans 31-27 in the Super Bowl. But it's a great time to be a Green Bay Packers fan if you are one, man, because it's been a while since I've had this much optimism about the Packers since the Aaron Rodgers days. And I mean the early 2010s era of the Green Bay Packers when they went 15-1 and they got upset by the New York Giants in the divisional round of the playoffs one year. Jordan Love is going to lead the Green Bay Packers back to the Lombardi Trophy, and they're going to bring the title back home to Title Town this year. So I'm picking Green Bay to be the team that ends up winning it all this season. I know a lot of you guys are going to disagree with me, but you are heavily underestimating how improved this defense is going to be. And with the top 15 defense potentially, Green Bay is going to be a really tough outing for any team they played this year, and you definitely don't want to see this team in the postseason. I got some really huge concerns about the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Recently, one of their key rookies that they're going to be heavily depending on this year, wide receiver Roman Wilson, got injured on a jet sweep early in training camp recently. And that has put the wide receiver position for Pittsburgh in huge disarray. Because remember, they traded away Deontay Johnson in the middle portion of the offseason to the Carolina Panthers. So outside of George Pickens, you don't really have any good wide receivers who you can trust to get open, beat press coverage. You got Van Jefferson, who right now is slotted as your wide receiver too, but he hasn't done anything noteworthy since his second season on the Los Angeles Rams. This dude pretty much was a ghost when he got traded to the Atlanta Falcons last year, and the majority of the wide receivers are nothing but slot guys. Calvin Austin, Scotty Miller, Quez Watkins. There's not really anybody who you can look at and say, yeah, they're going to be a really good number two option on the opposite side of George Pickens. And the Steelers' wide receiver position right now is very concerning to me. If you are going to throw out Justin Fields or Russell Wilson at quarterback this year, you need to make sure that they have a good group of wide receivers. You can only run the football so much until you got to put it in the air. And this is the worst that I've seen the Steelers wide receiver room being going into a season out of all my years being a Steelers fan. Normally, the Steelers always are guaranteed to have a really good wide receiver room that has a lot of talent and depth. I don't see it this year. you trade away Deion Johnson without really knowing who is going to be his replacement. And he was really overhated by a lot of Steeler Nation out there. He did have a problem with drops. He was a little bit of a drama queen, but that's to be expected when you have terrible quarterback play. Now, with Justin Fields and Russell Wilson entering the mix, imagine how good this offense could be if you still would have kept Deion Johnson. But you trade him away, and you've yet to find anybody who not only could be an upgrade, but somebody who could at least be half of what Deion Johnson was. Van Jefferson is not going to get it done. And at this point, the Steelers really have to go out and trade for a proven vet at wideout. Rather that be Brandon Ayuk or somebody else that's under the radar. You got to get some more talent in that wide receiver room, because George Pickens, as good as what he is, if you're the opposing defense, you're probably just going to triple team him. You're not going to allow George Pickens to have any opportunity to get open with how lackluster the rest of this wideout core is. Now, I'm guessing that their plan is Pat Freiermuth is going to be the second primary option in this passing game right behind Pickens, because he's the only guy who you pretty much can trust in this passing game, because you're definitely not about to trust no damn Van Jefferson or Scotty Miller. Calvin Austin is more just a big play guy. I don't really see him being a legitimate improvement from Deion Johnson or being able to have the kind of production that he did. Pat Freiermuth is really going to have to step up this year, and he's going to have a Pro Bowl caliber season, which definitely is possible since Arthur Smith is the offensive coordinator, and one thing that he did utilize a lot during his time in Atlanta was his tight end. So maybe Pat Freiermuth could be in for a career season this year with the lack of talent that the Steelers are currently dealing with at wide receiver. But losing Roman Wilson was a huge loss. And even before he went down with that injury, this still was a giant area of concern for the Steelers offense. Your offensive line is expected to be improved, but your wide receiver position, you majorly regressed compared to where you were last year. Deion Johnson, George Pickens could have been one of the better wide receiver duos if they had better quarterback play. Now you get rid of Deion Johnson, and you've yet to find a serviceable replacement for him. So I'm really concerned about how the wide receiver position is looking right now for Pittsburgh. It's in really bad shape. With the recent injury to Roman Wilson, nobody knows how long he's going to be out and when his timetable for return is, but it did look like a pretty serious injury. It doesn't look like one of those little things where he's going to end up missing a week or two and then he'll be fine. From the looks of it, he may be out for a while. So I got some concerns about this wide receiver room that the Steelers have going into this year, man. Doesn't give me a lot of confidence that the Steelers are going to have a good season this year, considering all of the question marks around the quarterback position, Arthur Smith, and now your wide receiving core takes a giant hit, losing one of the key guys that you were going to be heavily dependent upon. Shout out to everybody in the comment section. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. If you're listening on X, hit that like button, retweet the stream, give us a follow. If you're listening on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we upload new content. Remember that we're not just a YouTube channel. We are a podcast. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. And give us a 5-star review if you enjoy. Now, I want to segue to some college football. Sam Pittman has the second hottest seat in college football going into this year, right behind Billy Napier. And if he gets fired, I really believe there's a strong possibility that prime time could be coming to Fayetteville, Arkansas. Now, before you Razorbacks fans say, man, we ain't no chance in hell we about to hire some Deion Sanders. Do you know that Arkansas actually interviewed Deion Sanders back in 2019 before he ever took the head coaching job at Jackson State? Jerry Jones, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, and he's an alum of Arkansas, he actually set up an interview with Coach Prime and the athletic director of Arkansas for their vacant head coaching gig at the time. And Deion Sanders interviewed so well that they actually were really close to hiring him. It's just that their AD was scared to pull the trigger on making the move because he didn't want Deion Sanders' first time being a head coach, being in the SEC. It's not an easy place to learn on the job when you're coaching in the toughest conference in college football. So he didn't feel like that would have been the best move for the Razorbacks at that time with Deion's inexperience. But now, with Deion having success at Jackson State, and if he has a big season year 2 this year at Colorado and they win 7-8 games this year, you definitely have to reconsider hiring Deion Sanders because you already brought him in for an interview. Jerry Jones lined it up. And listen, if Sam Pittman gets fired, Bobby Petrino, I don't think is going to be a good hire. I understand that you had a lot of success in the past under Bobby Petrino, but he seems to have gotten worse with age. And if you were to hire Deion Sanders, he will bring everything that Arkansas football is missing right now, which is hype, talent, something that Deion Sanders is going to bring. You know that Deion Sanders is going to be able to recruit at Arkansas. They got a really good NIL backing, in my opinion. It's just that it's hard to buy into a guy in Sam Pittman that doesn't really give you a reason to want to donate any money to Arkansas's NIL collective, considering how bad the last couple of seasons have been for this program. And plus, with a guy like Deion Sanders, you saw the impact that he's had on Colorado. He has improved enrollment rates. The amount of money that they've been getting in the city of Boulder has gone up tremendously. Arkansas needs some juice. They need some attention. They need to get people talking about this program. They need to improve their recruiting if they're ever going to be able to get back to the program that they used to be. Some of y'all seem to forget that Arkansas used to be one of the better programs in college football prior to the last couple of down years they've had. Remember, this is a program that's like top 20, top 25 all times in wins. So you get the right head coach in there, you definitely could have a team that could be competitive and possibly compete for the college football playoffs. And if I'm Arkansas, you get rid of Sam Pittman, you might as well go ahead and hire Deion Sanders if Colorado has a good year. Now, if Colorado has another losing season, then you just go ahead and you find somebody else. But Deion Sanders will bring so much energy to this Arkansas fan base, which is something that they are severely lacking. And this is one of the more bigger fan bases in the SEC. Every time I talk about Arkansas, the content always does really great numbers. So imagine how hyped they would be to have a guy like Deion Sanders in there if he proves that he can turn things around at Colorado. You're going to have somebody who can get more money out of the NIL collective. You're going to have somebody who's going to be better at bringing in big-time recruits. I know that he hasn't had a lot of success recruiting at Colorado, but that's because he's been prioritizing getting things off the ground, utilizing the transfer portal. But at Arkansas, with way more funding and way more better resources than what he has to work with at Colorado, Arkansas definitely could take tremendous strides and improve in recruiting under Deion Sanders if he was to get hired. And at this point, he can't be no worse than what you've gotten out of Sam Pittman the last couple of years. And when you made the mistake of hiring Chad Morris, man, when you hired Chad Morris, that damn near ran Arkansas football into the ground, and they damn near became irrelevant. And then you hire Sam Pittman. He had that big year when they won 9 games. They beat Texas A&M. Guys were crying. But ever since then, the magic with Sam Pittman has just seemed to run out. And it just doesn't seem like Arkansas football has any momentum. You bring in Deion Sanders, not only is it going to re-energize this fan base, but it's going to help out recruiting, and you will be better in the long term with Deion Sanders being your head coach than what you would be by bringing back Bobby Petrino. Bobby Petrino got fired by Louisville for a reason. What makes you think that he's going to be able to bring back the magic that he had in his earlier days when he was at Arkansas. It's a way different era of college football now than when we last saw Bobby Petrino coaching at Arkansas. I really don't see it. I think they would be better off hiring Deion Sanders, and Paul Feinbaum thinks that there's a good chance it can happen. There's been a few odds makers out there that have Deion Sanders heavily favored to be Arkansas's next head coach. If you're Arkansas, hiring Deion Sanders to me would be a really good move, although it would be really risky because going from the Big 12 to the SEC is going to be a giant leap. And even if Colorado has a good year this year, it still wouldn't be enough to guarantee that, oh yeah, Deion Sanders is just destined to have success at Arkansas. You know, it still would be a little bit of an experiment, but it would be an experiment worthwhile because you're going to get a lot of revenue. You're going to sell a lot of tickets. And plus, you know, it's going to give people a reason to talk about Arkansas football again. I would not be surprised if we see Deion Sanders become the next head coach of the Razorbacks in 2025. Jerry Jones seems to have a strong hold on this Arkansas football program because if he was able to pull enough strings to get Deion Sanders his first ever head coaching interview with Arkansas, you mean to tell me that you don't think Jerry Jones could pull some more strings and get them to hire Deion Sanders? I expect Arkansas to at least give Coach Prime a look. And at this point, you don't have anything to lose because Chad Morris was horrendous. Sam Pittman has been horrendous outside of that 9-win season. What do you have to lose at this point by hiring Deion Sanders? At least you know that the recruiting is going to be good. You're going to have a way more talented team than what you would have keeping Sam Pittman or getting Bobby Petrino. I would love to see Arkansas hire Deion Sanders. I don't see how it doesn't happen. You already gave him his first ever interview before he ever took the Jackson State job. I expect Arkansas to be heavy on Deion's trail once they get rid of Sam Pittman. Shout out to everybody in the comment section. Shout out to my guy M Sparks. Shout out to my guy Kate Roan. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. We got a few more things we got to hit on before we get up on out of here. Florida fans are really mad at me because recently I released my way too early replacements for Billy Napier. I don't see him surviving this season. I expect him to get fired once this season comes to a close. Florida fans keep telling you that the reasoning for why Billy Napier has not had a lot of success early on at Florida has been to the lack. We got to run that back, man. Florida fans are really upset with me because a few days ago I released my way too early replacements for Billy Napier. I don't think he's going to survive this season. I believe this is the final year of the Billy Napier era down in Gainesville. And Florida fans keep coming at me saying that Billy Napier hasn't had a lot of talent. Now he has a good team. The reasoning for Florida not being bowl eligible last year had nothing to do with talent. You don't need to have the best team in America to not have 13 men on the field. There were games that Florida lost due to bad coaching. And that's the reasoning why I think Florida is not going to have a good season in 2024. Because Billy Napier hasn't shown any promise his first couple of years at Florida. No matter how talentless you try to make it seem like Florida has been the previous 2 years under Billy, it's not like Florida has been one of the worst teams from a talent standpoint in college football. And no matter what, winning anything less than 6 games at the University of Florida is unacceptable when you think about the pageantry and the tradition of this program. At this point, keeping Billy Napier, if the Gators win 6 games, kind of could be a detriment to the brand of Florida football because you lose a little bit of your prestige. So now you're saying that mediocrity should be tolerated because that's what you're getting out of Sunbelt Billy. Florida is constantly underprepared, undisciplined, They were heavily penalized last year. He has terrible clock management. His late game decision making is really bad. And plus, he calls the plays on offense, and his play calling isn't that good neither. Remember, the people who tell you that Billy Napier was gifted with the Florida team that had no talent due to Dan Mullen's lackluster recruiting was the same guy who inherited Anthony Richardson. Tell me why Anthony Richardson played better in the NFL than what he did at Florida under Billy's play calling. Because everybody said that Anthony Richardson wasn't going to be that good in the NFL. He couldn't read defenses. He was inaccurate. All of a sudden, he goes to the Colts and he looked way better than what he ever did at Florida. Why? Because of the play calling. Billy Napier is the problem at Florida, not their lack of talent. There were plenty of coaches last year who did more with less. Do you mean to tell me that Billy Napier couldn't win 6 games at Florida, but Mike Elko could win more than 6 games at Duke? How is that possible? And Duke was not a more talented team than what Florida was. They were a more well-coached team than what Florida was. Kalen DeBoer, Florida had a more talented roster according to 24/7 Sports Team Talent Composite rankings than what Washington had. If Kalen DeBoer was coaching at Florida, do you think that they would be having an over-under win total of 4.5, 5.5? Absolutely not. Hell, even Dan Mullen, if he was still the head coach for Florida right now, they would be in a way better position than what they are. With how tough Florida's schedule is, week 1 against Miami, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Texas on the road. You're going to play Georgia and get smacked once again. The odds are just stacked against Billy Napier's favor, and I don't see him beating the odds. I really don't. I loved Billy Napier coming out of the University of Louisiana. And that's what you Florida fans seem to forget. When they first made this hire, I was a big fan of it. I've watched more Billy Napier than what the majority of you Florida fans have. You guys were not watching Billy Napier when he was winning the Sun Belt Conference with Levi Lewis at quarterback and Elijah Mitchell at running back. This is not the kind of coaching that I was expecting Florida to receive when they hired this dude. And it's never acceptable to win less than 6 games at a program with the tradition and the prestige of Florida. Billy Napier looks a lot more similar to Scott Frost than what people fail to realize. You know, Dan Mullen, as much flack as what he gets, there weren't too many years when Florida was ever doubted as much as what they are going into this year. Dan Mullen was an excellent X's and O's coach. He was a great strategist. Hell, there was one point when people were trying to say that Dan Mullen was a better X's and O's coach than Kirby Smart. You severely have downgraded that head coach with the hiring of Billy Napier. And I wasn't saying this at first, but the more I continue to watch Billy Napier's tenure at Florida go on, the less confidence I have in him. I lose more confidence in Billy Napier every day talking about him because there's not a lot to be confident about. You keep selling talent when talent hasn't been the complete reason why Florida has fallen flat on their faces. It's been due to having 13 men on the field, being often penalized, not being able to make proper adjustments, and continuing to call plays. He's not a good play caller. A lot of us thought that he was going to give up the play calling after how bad things looked. And he's still going to be calling the plays. I just don't have a lot of confidence in Billy Napier this year. And I see the writing on the wall. Talent's not the issue. If Mike Elko's winning 6 and more games at Duke, why can't Billy Napier do the same at Florida? If you can do more with less, that shows how good of a head coach you are. If you can elevate the team around you, despite not being as talented as what Gator fans try to say this team has been the last 2 years, then I think that's more of a coaching problem because you should at least be able to get to 6 wins. Replace Billy Napier with Mike Elko last year. Is this still a team that goes below 500? My problem with Florida this year is not the talent. It's the coaching. There's no point and recruiting all these 5 and 4 star guys if you can't develop them and you can't put them in situations to succeed? For as much hate that Dan Mullen gets from you Florida fans, he was getting guys that he recruited drafted into the NFL. Kadarius Toney, Kyle Pitts were former first-round picks. Kyle Trask was a day 2 pick. How many Florida players have been drafted in the NFL under Billy Napier's regime? Not too many that I can name from the top of my head, and I don't count Ricky Pearsall. He was a transfer portal guy. I'm looking for guys that you brought into your program via recruiting and you developed. I mean, I guess you can consider Ricky Pearsall to be a Billy Napier product because he did develop him somewhat, but I mean, there's just not a lot of confidence that I have in Billy Napier to beat the odds this year and save his job. I don't see Florida winning no more than 5 games. And a lot of people think that they're going to be a lot worse than that. I'm giving them 5 wins just because, I do think that there are a couple of easy wins on this schedule and a couple of games that could go their way. But most people have them winning 3-4 games. And Billy Napier is the main reason why, because this team, they're lacking good coaching. Coaching means so much. A lot of you guys make it seem like it's all about talent this and talent that, when Jimbo Fisher paid for the best recruiting class in college football history, and look where that got him because of how bad of a coach he is. So I don't see Billy Napier saving his job this year. One of my biggest predictions for this upcoming college football season is that Billy Napier is going to get fired. And I feel really strongly about it. I know that it seems really harsh and unethical to say that somebody's going to get fired. And trust me, it isn't easy for me to come on here and say that, but I just got to keep it real with y'all. I really don't see it with Sunbelt Billy down there in the swamp. There's one more thing I want to talk about. Miami Hurricanes quarterback Cam Ward has been announced as the ACC's preseason player of the year. Now, I didn't even know that there was a player of the year award given out during the preseason, but Cam Ward definitely deserves it. He is, without a doubt, the best quarterback entering the ACC this year, and he is going to be 90% of the reason why the U is about to be back. The glory days of Miami football from the early 2000s to the 80s and 90s have been something that I've been unable to experience as my time being a Hurricanes fan due to how young I am. I'm only 22 years old. I became a fan of this team due to playing with them a lot back in NCAA 13, due to how big of a fan I was of Duke Johnson, Brad Kaya, and Stephen Morris. But I can't really recall the last time Miami was actually relevant in terms of the national championship conversation. This year, though, a lot is about to change because Cam Ward is easily the most talented quarterback that this program has had over the last 15 years. Coming from Washington, he had a 25-7 touchdown interception ratio. And Washington State, they didn't have a lot of great wide receivers. There weren't a lot of NFL talent that Cam Ward had surrounding him. He's going to be playing in a similar scheme that he's played in his previous 2 schools when he was at Incarnate World at a FCS level and at Washington State, because Miami's OC, Shannon Dawson, runs an air raid style offense. And what has hindered Miami these last couple of years has been their inconsistent quarterback play. Tyler Van Dyke, he fooled us all. He had that really good freshman season under Rhett Lashley and Manny Diaz, and then after that, he just completely fell apart. With Cam Ward, you have somebody who is going to be good enough where Miami, there's not going to be a single game that you look at on their schedule with Cam Ward and you say, yeah, they are going to lose that game. He should be able to play at a Heisman level, and with him playing at that level, that should elevate the entire Miami Hurricanes team. We know the defense is going to be really good, and with him at quarterback in the same backfield as Damian Martinez, this Miami Hurricanes team could end up delivering one of the best seasons of Miami football that we've seen in a very long time. The last time Miami came close to sniffing the national title conversation was back in 2017 when they won 10 games and they lost to Wisconsin in the Orange Bowl under Mark Richt. Miami has been held back because they haven't really been able to find consistency at QB. Cam Ward is going to change that. With how deep Miami is at wide receiver, Xavier Restrepo, you got a lot of 4- and 5-star guys that Miami has recruited out of high school. You're going to have a stacked offensive line. There's no reason why Cam Ward should not only be a Heisman finalist, but why he shouldn't have Miami playing in an ACC title game and hoisting that ACC championship trophy. He's the truth. The last time I've been this hyped about a Hurricanes quarterback was when De'Aaron King transferred a few years ago. And, you know, he was a massive disappointment because he wasn't able to stay healthy, which is why we got to see Tyler Van Dyke in the first place. But Cam Ward, with how good of an arm he has, really accurate, good mobility, there's no reason why Miami shouldn't win the ACC this year. He's about to resurrect Miami football, and he's about to give Miami their best quarterback play that they've seen since the Ken Dorsey years. That's how good Cam Ward is going to be. And Florida State fans are really salty because they try to make it seem like he's overrated when, in all actuality, if they would have had the opportunity to be able to pick between DJU and Cam Ward, we know all in our hearts, they know too who they would have preferred. Cam Ward is going to change everything for Miami football, and he's going to bring the U back, and everybody better start drinking that Miami Hurricanes Kool-Aid, man. I've been telling y'all all off season that I've been heavy on that Miami Hurricanes drink. I've been drinking that orange and green Kool-Aid, and it tastes like ACC championship to me. I'm not expecting Miami to win it all this year, but I would be really shocked if we don't see them in the college football playoffs and if Cam Ward is not Heisman finalist. This is one of the most talented quarterbacks in the country. A lot of people on the West Coast know about how good this dude is, but a lot of people in the South don't know how good Cam Ward is because you probably weren't watching too much of the Washington State Cougars, and don't lie to me and make it seem like you were. You weren't watching Pac-12 After Dark, man. That's why you don't know how good Cam Ward is. I'm really excited for this upcoming season of college football, man, because the Canes, for the first time in my life, being a fan of this program is actually going to give me a reason to believe that we not only can win this conference, but we definitely have a good chance to shock some people this year. And I can't wait for it. And Cam Ward is going to be the main catalyst behind the resurgence of Miami football in 2024. The U is back, people. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in on YouTube, X. Hit that like button, share the stream, retweet if you enjoyed. Remember that you can find every episode, including this one, in audio format on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. Shout out to everybody in the comment section, man. Shout out to my guy, Kate Roan, M Spark. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. And I appreciate all you guys for joining and watching this live stream on this wonderful Friday afternoon. I'm probably going to end up going live Sunday or Monday. I am going to do a mailbag episode tomorrow. So if you got a question that you would like featured, make sure that you send them in the DMs on Instagram at JTSports_ and on X at JTSports__. I appreciate you.